Well, Pedro, it's great to be sat down again with you, and really
nice to see you again.
It's really great. And now you're with True Digital, in Thailand, and really want to talk about driving that value out of data. So, first of all, before we get into what you're doing, we've been on a bit of a data journey as an industry. Do you want to talk a little bit about, your data journey over the past few years, and are we seeing the industry moving forward?
Yes, my data journey. Well, so I am a telecom engineer by education. When I was at university, I started playing a little bit with neural networks for character recognition. That was kind of the early days, right? I would say. Then I did an MBA where I started working on using data and analytics for marketing purposes. At that time, it was called statistics. Now we call it AI, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. Then I joined McKinsey, where I started implementing those things at scale in companies. In Axiata, which is the next company where I was Group VP of Data, and I was working mainly on internal use cases for telco, particularly recommendations and pricing. And the second one that is huge is CapEx planning. And now I am in True. I'm running a business unit that is called True Analytics. And in True Analytics, we have access to all the data of the telecom operator. We have access to the web history of 30 million subscribers. We have access to, well, obviously, calls, SMS, billing, all the location, mobility information about all the subscribers. Obviously, we have it in our database in an anonymized way. And with all that information, we are developing enterprise use cases for enterprise clients. And they are mainly four. First one is advertising, which is the main one by far. The second one is credit scoring, very relevant in Asia. And then we have customer intelligence. And finally, something that is starting to take off is data enrichment. How can we enrich the databases of enterprise clients complying with privacy standards?
And that's great for use cases externally. And that's always been the conundrum. That's what I was talking to Saranjeet before. Is there still a nervousness around monetizing data?
Yes, I would say there's still a nervousness. I mean, obviously, monetizing the data of a telecom operator externally is a new business, and it's a new business in which there is a risk, there is a reputational risk. As we are talking, data is it's a very sensitive topic. There is a reputational risk, and obviously, telecom operators don't want to put their core business at risk, right? So it is important to have the right governance between the business unit that is monetizing data externally and the core and the parent company, right?
Yeah, and just want to touch on that before we go into those use cases. Data governance. When we talk about data governance, people tend to roll their eyes because it doesn't seem a very sexy topic, but it's absolutely fundamental to actually, enabling the use cases that you just talked about. So what is that approach to data governance that you've got at True? Has it changed?
Well, so data governance is a series of procedures that you put in place in order to handle data as an asset, not as a resource, something that is there, right? And to protect it. What is fundamental when it comes to data monetization is, a few things, but the most fundamental one is how you manage the consent, of the users. Because in order to monetize the data, you will need to have that consent according to regulations, and getting that consent, asking for it, having the specific kinds of consent that matter is the key of the subject. And also how you get permission from the mother company in order to monetize the data. You don't want to do it case by case. You want to have a structured governance in which what is possible to do is very clear. What is not allowed to do is also very clear. And then you don't have to go back to the operator on an ongoing basis asking questions every time.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Having a data governance structure which is flexible, so you don't have to keep going back. So let's apply this maybe to some of the work that you're doing. So you talked about the kind of four areas, advertising, credit scoring, which I imagine is a big business coming forward now, that customer intelligence and data enrichment. So let's talk about with advertising. What have you been doing and innovating in that area? Because it's an area that telco could have got into, but kind of missed the boat in a lot of ways with the likes of Google.
It kind of missed the boat in a lot of ways. So, there is, around 1 month ago, there was a press release from the European Commission that is quite interesting. So the European Commission has approved a joint venture between Orange, Vodafone, Telefonica, and Deutsche Telekom, in order to create a joint venture to monetize data, for advertising purposes, for marketing and advertising purposes, in which they are going to derive an advertising ID from the telephone number or from the ID that the customer has in a hashed way. And with those IDs, they are going to do advertising on third-party channels, right? Which is a very bold move, right? So here in Thailand, well, obviously we don't have a joint venture, but we have tried to do something similar. As I was saying, the telecom operator has a lot of data from different sources. Most relevant ones for advertising are obviously mobility and web history. And with this data, you can build a 360 view of the customer in a quite comprehensive way. So what we have done here in Thailand is for every single one of the 30 million customers we have 400 attributes. And these attributes are 4 kinds. First kind is, well, demographics, right? So you can know typical demographics like gender, age, but also affluence, which is quite important. Profession, you can have an understanding of the profession of the person, depending where he goes to work, depending on some information he provides when he registers for the SIM, etc. The second kind that we have is geography, and geography is very important. We can know the home location, we can know the work location, we can know whether somebody travels domestically, whether somebody travels internationally. We can go if you are going to the park at 7 a.m. to play yoga. So it's very, very important for advertising, right? Third thing that we have is interest. Depending on the browsing history of a subscriber, you can know whether that person is interested in insurance or in getting a mortgage, or is a person that is probably having kids because he's going to websites about parenting, or is a person that likes Japanese food or is interested in crypto, or quite a lot of information. So we have specific labels for those things. And the last one is behavior. So what do you do? Are you a customer of what bank? We can know that. Are you a user of, do you take food delivery? What is the credit card that you use? Because when you go to the payment gateway, we can detect the URL. So all that information is very important for advertising. What is critical here is not only the data, but it's also having the right channels. Telco channels are not enough. You need to have third-party channels. And that's why governance is important, because you are going to send...
Sharing them with a third party.
With a third party. So telco channels, SMS is good, but not enough. Many telcos have other channels which can be used, such as some telcos have video streaming services like we have in True. Some telcos have e-wallet. Some telcos have obviously the customer service application. Having a large variety of channels so that you can reach to many people, and sometimes external channels, that is very, very important.
And what is the role, though, of AI in this, gleaning those insights? So you've got this data, as you said, you may be sharing it with third party. Maybe they're sharing some data back. Are you now starting to apply the intelligence and the AI on top of that data to make next best offers, for example?
What you can do for specific clients is having a specific propensity models for specific purposes, right? So you can have a propensity model for insurance, which is something that we do quite a lot. Life insurance, health insurance is something that works really, really well with telco data. So you can create a model that predicts the needs or predicts the propensity that somebody will have to buy an insurance. That kind of things can be done for credit cards as well. So those are things that we are starting to work on top of just using segmentation.
And that's talking about the credit cards. That takes us to our next case study, which I think is very interesting particularly for the Asia region, because it's an area I think which is actually continuing to grow, which is around the credit scoring. Because in Asia, lots of financial services starting to be provided by the telco, actually, as opposed to Europe, where it's already done kind of by the financial giants or by Apple and Google Pay. So how important is that role into credit scoring and then evolving to other parts of your business to say now we can use this data for credit scoring, but also to do things like payment systems?
Yeah. And a lot of telcos have payment systems. We have, right? So we have True Money Wallet. So credit scores are, based on the payment behavior of people in prepaid and postpaid. You can create a score. Originally, we started creating those scores for internal purposes, to use it for airtime finance. So allowing customers to continue using their phone when their phone doesn't have balance. We started with that. Then we started providing loans in True Money Wallet, and now we are working with external parties. Now, something that is fundamental, if you work on credit scoring with external parties, is understanding how much % of the population is unbanked. In countries where you have a large percentage of population unbanked, like for example Indonesia, you can, as a telco, you can have a share of the book value of the loans because digital lenders will want to get your credit score to reach to customers that are not in the credit bureau. That happens in Indonesia. If you're in a country where the unbanked population is lower, the opportunity is smaller. Thailand is somewhere in the middle of this spectrum, right? But it's a huge opportunity, and it's something that can help to build financial inclusiveness as well.
Then we're going about the third use case, customer intelligence. And this whole section is about breaking down those data silos. So how are you breaking down those data silos at True? Because the problem with customer intelligence, you've got network data, you've got customer data, you've got, the IT, the BSS, all of that data. How are you bringing that together to break down those silos to get what we used to call, that 360-degree view of the customer?
Yeah, and that's precisely, so what we did is we built this customer database, this database where we have aggregated information from the whole business. So we have, to start with, the packet inspection. We have network data, not as much as we wanted, but we have some network data. We have CDRs. We have data from Wi-Fi. We have data from different aspects, right? And putting all that data together is what enables to do different use cases, because the power of data comes or grows exponentially with the variety of data that you have together. If you have silos, it's less useful than if you put all the data together, right? So that's one of the things that we did.
And where does data sit? Is it centralized? Is it decentralized in the different areas? How are you working that?
It used to be a cluster of Hadoop servers, and last year we migrated that to cloud, and now we are totally on cloud, completely on cloud.
And are you managing to understand that data? Because one of the things I see from a lot of CSPs, once they migrate to a cloud, it goes from a data lake to a data swamp, because they just can't understand what they've done. They're just on the lift and the shift, and they can't gain those insights. What have you learned to avoid doing that? So you
need to create aggregate tables that are structured. So maybe the data that you have is totally unstructured, like deep packet inspection. Deep packet inspection is just logs in HTML format. Some of them are encrypted. So what you have to do from there is you have to create a proper table, well structured, where you have each one of the customers, which URL reach that customer at what time, right? You create that table, and then you will have another table after that that says, according to these websites, what is the segmentation of each customer. So there is a number of aggregate tables that have increased degrees of abstraction that you have to build.
And let's go to your fourth use case, which really excites me, which is data enrichment. This is what we talk about all the time. Not only is the value, not only is the data valuable that you have, but you have to add value back. So what are you doing in and around data enrichment?
So data enrichment means, and this is an emerging opportunity. I wouldn't say is yet fully there, but it's an emerging opportunity. Data enrichment means that there are businesses that are building data assets about their customers, because now you cannot use cookies, right? So they are building data assets. And one way of building data assets is having partnerships with companies that have data, like, for example, telcos, right? And with the data of the telco, you enrich your database and you start having more data about those customers. There are different ways of doing that in ways that are compliant with PDPA and privacy. One way of doing that is basically not putting personal identifiable information at all, right? And that's something that you can do. You can aggregate data by location, you can aggregate data by segmentation, and then you can share it with a client, right? Mm-hmm. So you could create a real-time map of how many people are in different places and share it with an outdoors advertising company, and that will be available to them. So that's the first option. The second option is, okay, I'm going to share personal identifiable information, but every time I share that information, I need to request the explicit consent of the user. So imagine, for example, that you have a retailer, the retailer has a loyalty program, but they want to get more information about the customers. So what we do is we offer them, we do a campaign, and we say, hey, if you want to give us more information through your telecom operator, please put your telephone number here, you accept the terms, and then you're going to get this voucher, or you're going to get this offer, and that's one way that it could work in privacy compliant ways. And the last way, which is the most technological, is using specific technologies that allow two parties to create an output from data from the two parties without revealing each one of the parties what data they are providing. Sounds like magic, but there are algorithms that allow to do that, and there are also specific hardware servers that allow to make that data matching and data crunching in a server where the data resides encrypted, but it's only it gets decrypted to make the calculations in the processor, but nobody can touch that. So if an administrator tries to get there, what he sees is binary encrypted information, which would not be useful, right? So by doing that, you are actually not sharing anything. You are getting an output together with another guy, but you are not sharing any information to him or the other way around. And this is another way of doing it. These approaches are very early stage.
Yeah.
The business opportunity is very early stage, but if you are able to share data in ways that are compliant with privacy laws, and at the same time, if you are able to price that data, then you are effectively building a data economy that can be very useful for many businesses.
Very important. And we keep saying something like worth $3.6 trillion in dollars, this enrichment of data. And I've got a final question for you before we go, but I know you'll be joining us for the panel later. Pedro, I want you to turn back time. I want you to go back a year ago. What would one thing you do that's different?
Now that 1 year ago, well, I mean, I think the thing that has been most unexpected in the last year is probably generative AI, right? Some of the things that we are doing now that we were not doing before. So we are using generative AI to write our code, review our code, debug the code, sometimes to improve it because you want to run it faster. So with our team of data scientists, we are starting to use that more and more, and we hope to be able to automatically generate a significant percentage of our code.
Great. Pedro Uría-Recio, the Chief Analytics and AI Officer of True Digital Time. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later.
Thank you, Pedro. Well, actually, don't go yet, because I do have a question for you from Slido.
Oh, look at that.
It's a fantastic question. It's about what you were just talking about. See, another 30 seconds or so. Question about, is data monetization realistic in this heavily regulated industry of ours? Are there examples of operators that have been successful so far?
It is a fair question, right? Well, I was mentioning before that 4 operators in Europe are doing a joint venture precisely for that, right? And the joint venture has been approved by the European Union. There are many barriers to monetizing the data. You are absolutely right. Telecom operators are not familiarized with it. They are typically risk averse when it comes to reputational risks, and that is a break to the business opportunity. And I will say, in the specific areas that I have mentioned, the limitation for advertising is absolutely in the channels. You need to have channels that are non-telco. It's absolutely there. For credit scoring, the limitation is a little bit on how much the percentage of unbanked population is in your country. If you're in a country that has a lot of unbanked population, probably that's something that could work. Is working in Indonesia for certain operators where they are able to get 3-4% of the book value of loan. And some of them have joint ventures about that as well. Customer intelligence or competitor intelligence. I know that Vodafone in Europe is doing it quite well. They're working quite a lot, specifically with big companies. The advantage of Vodafone is because they are in the whole Europe. If they productize a solution, let's say for retail, they can sell it in every country. The problem there is productization, right? And then the last thing, data enrichment is totally new. I don't know where future is going to take us.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like case-by-case basis that you can actually make money out of data. Fabulous. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And as you said, Aaron, we will be seeing Pedro a little bit later.